What's going on, everyone? Lots of crazy stuff going on with the market right now. We're going to talk about the SPY, the IWM, the NASDAQ, the large tech stocks, the 30-year bond. We're going to talk about the crypto market. Lots of things look bullish. Some things look bearish. Ukraine seems to be about to get invaded by Russia. What is about to go on? So we're going to talk about all that stuff to start the first day of the week. And, yeah, man, without further ado, let's get started with the video. All right, first of all, everything looked all well and good, right? And basically, this was the reason why we fell. So President Zelensky of Ukraine said, and this report came out. So they said, oh, you know, on February 16th, it's going to be the day of the attack. So February 16th is Wednesday. Cool, right? The market fell because of that news. Understandable, right? The next line of this report said the Ukrainian officials told reporters that Zelensky was not being literal about an attack on Wednesday. So why would he say that we're told that February 16th would be the day of the attack? Cool. No idea, right? And then basically the Pentagon press secretary told reporters that we still don't believe that some final decision has been made. All while this was happening, basically, the president of Ukraine said that the 16th was going to be a day of the attack. And then he told his people that it's going to be a day of unity. We're going to hold like a rally in Kiev, and we're going to rally together and bring the morale of the country together. And he said that's going to be the day of the attack. And then just a bunch of just differing reports. But while those differing reports were happening, the SPY ended up falling. All right. So let's talk about what's going on with the SPY from a technical standpoint, regardless of what news is going on. And at the end of the video, I'm going to tie it in with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is traded 24 hours and it can respond. If Bitcoin is showing strength, essentially, then the entire market, I believe, is also going to show strength. All right. So the SPY currently, number one, we came back, retested the support at 435, essentially, right? We see that we bounced back above it. The MACD, yellow MACD indicator is moving upwards, which shows that the overall momentum is still moving upwards. And the blue MACD line is now below it, right? So it means that the MACD is oversold. But now this RSI looks terrifying to me. The RSI is we had a red day and we slid down intraday, yet the RSI barely fell. You can see the RSI number right here. Okay, the RSI went from 41.19 to 40.31 on a red day, and we basically slid down. Yet the RSI is barely creeping down below. That is telling me that there can be a huge vomit to the downside. All right. This is literally the main reason why I didn't alert longs. All right. Everywhere else, essentially, like, I'm going to go over the videos and everything. I'm going to go over it in the video, but this is going to be the main reason why I just did not feel comfortable going long. And obviously, you know, war and the other macroeconomic things that were going on this week. But this RSI just looks garbage to me. All right. Until we can see some sort of confirmation, until we maybe get a close above today's high of 441.60, ideally a close above 443.38, I wouldn't feel comfortable going long just yet. All right. It is a good sign that the Bollinger Band is starting to, you know, squeeze, and this lower level of the Bollinger Band is we're pretty close to it. All right. So, and another thing is, if you remember yesterday's video when I was going over Facebook, the lower Bollinger Band, when it is pointed down dramatically, that means that there's a lot more room to the downside. But when the Bollinger Band is like this, when it's basically curling up, right, and the upper level of the Bollinger Band is sharply falling down, that means that it's starting to bottom out. So that is a good sign. That's a that is technically a good sign in the short term. But this RSI just looked garbage to me. So I didn't feel comfortable alerting any longs. And ideally, I'm going to remain, you know, overall optimistic for a bounce and, you know, overall, you know, until we get like a clear change in interest rates and a clear cut from the Fed, then we're going to start easing back on our overall bullish outlook. But for now, still just waiting for dips to buy. All right. Right now, this is not a dip to buy. So 434.74 is going to be the main level of support to the downside. Then 433.34. And then over here, just going to be a lot of choppy movement. If we vomit and we end up closing outside of the lower level of the B band, we're going to be very overextended. The MACD is going to be very oversold. And then the RSI will potentially start getting a bit more oversold, which will be a good thing. But this RSI just looks very, very bad. Wait for a close above these levels before you go long, in my opinion. And that is what I'm going to wait for as well, unless we get really overextended to the downside and I see clear strength in the IWM and the NASDAQ. Until then, just wait. All right. So there's that for the IWM. Next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the here's that for the SPY. Next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the IWM. So now this is where things get a little interesting. All right. So remember yesterday I was saying that, you know, the IWM could have fell and it could have been way worse. Well, today we barely really fell compared to where we were yesterday. And that's what I meant. I guess because like the IWM is continuing to show much more strength than the NASDAQ and the SPY recently, the falls to the downside are not as heavy because banks and hedge funds are more overweight, especially 50-50 funds, 60-40 funds, whatever. They're more overweight the Russell and the basket of stocks and the Russell, etc. Right? So that's why it's not responding as terribly. And you can also see the Bollinger Bands right here. The upper and the lower level of the Bollinger Bands are starting to really tighten up. So when they tighten up like this, there's usually a high chance that there's going to be an aggressive move to either the upside or the downside. So this is going to be very, very exciting because we're going to catch this move and it's going to be pretty amazing. So I can't wait for that. So immediately, the IWM closed above 200 again, regardless of this huge hysteria and the bearishness going on in the market. It closed above 200. All right. It retested a bit below, closed above 200, and it closed above the 20 exponential moving average. So technically, that is pretty bullish, given the fact that given the fact that Europe is basically going to be at war. That's a pretty good sign. Number two, it's a good sign that the MACD is starting to, it's starting to basically cool off. It was very overbought. The blue MACD line was very overbought, and it's starting to become oversold. So you can see it's getting closer and closer to crossing down below the yellow level, while not really breaking down huge. Okay, so this bullishness is a good sign. It's basically consolidating in a range without breaking, while this MACD is starting to cool off a lot. All right, so that's basically what we want to see here. And if we can have another day or two where we range a bit, where we don't have a huge break to the downside, the IWM, in my opinion, the IWM and the NASDAQ are going to help lift the rest of the market up. And it's going to be very interesting. So essentially 200 needs to hold. If 200 doesn't hold, the same levels that I always talk about, 198, 197 level, and then this 23.6% fib at 195.50. All right. So you can see today we came back and retested this trend line literally on the dot, literally perfectly. If we had closed above this level, I was going to go long, but we didn't. And now tomorrow, the main level of resistance is going to approximately be 204.83. If we can close above that level tomorrow, then I'm going to, I mean, that would be spectacular. That's like $5 away, but that would be a reclaim of the 50 Fibonacci level, and a main reclaim of this broken uptrend. So that would be a spectacular, safe opportunity to go long. Another opportunity to go long would be a close above 203.74. But for now, even if tomorrow we close above 201.50, in my opinion, that's not a good enough close for us to go long. We want to see some definitive strength. We want to see this MACD, even if the MACD is falling lower, we want to see closes above resistance. So we're going to wait for a strong close above a major level of resistance. Nothing close around, 201, 202. All right. So there's that for the IWM. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the large tech stocks, the 30-year bond, and the NASDAQ. All right. This is basically why I was kind of confused about which way the market would go, because Apple technically, like it closed above some resistance levels. It closed above this 168.34 level and the 20 exponential moving average. Yes, we did break below, but this was a good bounce from Apple. So that, I mean, there's that, and the RSI is kind of moving upwards. So I mean, that's not as bearish as the SPY, right? And the MACD is very oversold, so we could easily have a bounce to 170.79. So Apple doesn't look terrible. All right, let's take a look at Microsoft. Microsoft doesn't look as good as Apple, but still, we came back, failed at 297.97, oversold on the MACD, and this RSI is falling a bit, yet we had somewhat of a green day, right? We came back from these lows intraday, and we almost closed green. So Microsoft doesn't look as good. But Google bounced basically off of that support level, held pretty perfectly, and had a pretty good close to the day. All right. And you can see that the MACD is very, very oversold here. And the RSI is starting to move upwards as well. So there's strength clearly we can see from Apple and Google. And then Amazon. Amazon clearly showing some strength here. So we saw a pretty good green day. While the MACD was falling, Amazon still had a green day. Off of today's lows, had a pretty good close as well. And then we can take a look at Tesla, very similar. Tesla had a pretty good green day as well. The RSI is moving upwards. The MACD is falling lower, yet we had a green day. That's a good sign. That's bullish. And that's why I was basically just like, these tech stocks are showing some strength. The IWM is closing above 200 once again. But then the SPY's RSI did not look good to me. The SPY's RSI looked really, really, really devastatingly garbage. So it was not worth, I want to have confluence among everything. And that was basically very, very worrisome to me. So that's, I mean, this is basically why I was so confused about which way the market would go, because these large trillion-dollar companies are showing bottoming out, showing some closing above resistance, showing positive divergence in the technical indicators. So, I mean, I was just a bit confused, and I didn't really take a position. I didn't alert anything. Let's take a look at the bonds. So the bonds still look bearish. And you can see that the MACD is starting to move upwards. So what we need to see out of the bonds here is we need to see the bonds really, really start to bounce a lot. And we need to see this MACD start to become very overbought. Remember a few weeks ago when the SPY's MACD and all of the other indices MACD, the yellow lines, were still oversold. They were still below zero. What ended up happening is the MACDs, let me show you guys. So look, So this yellow line moving downwards shows that the overall momentum of the security is bearish. So we needed this blue MACD level to really move upwards to bring the momentum of the yellow line upwards as well. And that's eventually what happened. So for us now on the 30-year bonds, we need that same exact thing to happen. We need this blue MACD line to really start to become very overbought and continue moving on upwards. That would change the momentum of this yellow MACD signal and start to move upwards as well. And that would bring the momentum overall for the tech sector as well bullish. So that's exactly what we need to see. We need to monitor if that's going to happen. All right, so that's really what we're going to just be monitoring here. So you can see that we had a red day, right? But we held this level of support once again. We had a higher close technically as well. And this MACD level is starting to curl upwards. In the next day or two, this MACD level is going to cross above. And then we really need to see it start closing above 153.07 and 153.29. If that can happen, and we continue moving on upwards, that's going to be very good for the entire the tech sector specifically. All right, so there's that for the bonds. Let's go ahead and take a look at the NASDAQ. So the NASDAQ, let me fix this up. So the RSI on the NASDAQ is sort of hinting to the upside. And we sort of had a bit of a green day today. All right. The MACD is oversold. We failed at these levels of support. We failed at the levels of resistance. So overall, it's not. That's why it's really difficult to go long or short here. And one of the things actually now on the RSI for the NASDAQ is we really don't want to see the RSI on the NASDAQ moving upwards, even if we have a bit of a green day. What would be the most bullish is if the RSI on the NASDAQ was actually moving down, or if it didn't increase basically at all. All right. But all in all, the RSI is showing some bullishness. The MACD is oversold, right? Which means that it can cross back above. But again, we need to see closes above today's high at 351. And ideally, tomorrow we need to see a close above 353.50. 353.50-ish would be an ideal level for us to close above, for us to continue going long again on the market. But, that's really it. So, I mean, to really put everything together, the strength in Bitcoin, I think, is going to be a strong tell in the strength of the overall market. So technically, the NASDAQ, the indicators do look a bit bullish. We closed a bit above resistance, technically above the 23.6% fib. We closed above 347.38. Cool. And we need to close above those two levels of resistance for us to become bullish again. But now, when we look at the crypto market, when we look at Bitcoin, all right, Bitcoin is clearly closing above levels of resistance. We held this level of support at 41,000 very well. All right. And I was basically saying that 41,000 needed to hold. We never even came back and tested this level yet. The MACD here on Bitcoin is oversold and flat, and it's green. So that is very bullish. And the RSI is starting to move upwards. So if we're going to take... So this strength out of Bitcoin was another reason, was another very bullish thing I tweeted about. But the main reason why I just didn't feel comfortable going long was the RSI on the SPY. But there are many more reasons to be bullish. The IWM held 200. The NASDAQ, the large tech stocks were strong. The NASDAQ was basically strong, and Bitcoin is showing strength. And we can see that clearly Bitcoin is breaking above these levels of resistance, held support. It's still in this uptrend here. And essentially, the Bollinger Bands are starting to tighten up on Bitcoin as well. very similar to the rest of the indices market, and the NASDAQ is, it's starting to tighten up as well. So this could be setting up for a very, very strong move to the upside or the downside, and we're going to be playing that. And overall, lots of different things. Things were looking bearish, things were looking bullish. When you don't have a clear defined direction, there's no reason to take a stab at things unless they are justified. Right now, the SPY RSI looks bearish, the NASDAQ looks neutral, the IWM looks neutral, and Bitcoin basically looks pretty bullish. So I think now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make like a nice little table and talk about, like, for the SPY, the NASDAQ, the IWM, the 30-year bond, and Bitcoin. I'm going to have like columns that show like different indicators. And then I'm going to show, okay, like the SPY RSI, it looks bullish. The SPY MACD, it looks neutral. And boom, the NASDAQ RSI bullish. NASDAQ, da-da-da. So then we can start tracking that. And I think that would be pretty good as well. Let me know what you guys think about that. That would be a pretty good idea. Yeah, that might be pretty cool. But yeah, overall, I think that does it really for the market. We have Fed meeting minutes Wednesday at 2 p.m. So that's going to be a very important thing as well. But overall, basically the reason why we fell in the market today, we didn't get a full report. Zelensky apparently was not being literal about an attack on Wednesday, apparently, and Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby said we don't believe a final decision was made. So this downward move intraday today could have just been an overreaction. So we need to see. It would be interesting to see if the market bounces tomorrow. So there's that. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.